It's a Friday night in 1982. You've made plans to meet your friend at the movies. You wrote down the time, 7 p.m., Regal Cinema on 5th, 2 days ago on a piece of paper, which you have since lost. You don't know if they're still coming. You can't check, you can't text, you can't call because you're already in the car. You just show up and hope. That was life in 1982. No cell phones, no GPS, no "I'm 5 minutes away" text. No safety net of instant communication, just your memory, a paper map, and the understanding that when you made a plan, you kept it, because there was no other option. Today we're going back to that world, and trust me, it was more interesting than you think. Section 1, the payphone economy. Before we go any further, let's establish one thing. In 1982, communication didn't disappear when you left your house. It just got much, much harder. Enter the payphone. In the early 1980s, there were over 1.5 million payphones across the United States. They were everywhere. On street corners, inside malls, at gas stations, in lobbies, next to the popcorn machine at the movie theater. They were infrastructure, as essential as a fire hydrant. A local call cost a dime. Later, it went up to a quarter. You memorized the numbers you needed, your mom's office, your best friend's house, the pizza place. Because there was no contacts list, it was all up here. Tap Temple. And here's the thing nobody talks about. Payphones had an entire social etiquette built around them. You didn't linger. If someone was waiting, you kept it short. You didn't make emotional phone calls on a payphone because strangers could hear every word. You had to be efficient in a way that we've completely lost. Long distance was a different story. Calling someone in another state from a payphone could drain your quarters in minutes. Operators existed to help you place collect calls, where the other person agreed to pay. And this was a completely normal thing. College students called home collect every Sunday. It was ritual. If you were a teenager in 1982, you had a budget for calls. You thought before you dialed. There was no such thing as just checking in. Section 2. The art of the plan. Here's what changes when you remove the ability to communicate on the go. Everything has to be decided in advance. Today, plans are fluid. Let's figure it out when we get there. I'll text you when I'm close. Just drop a pin. In 1982, that was not available to you. You agreed on a time. You agreed on a place. You agreed on a backup plan. If I'm not there by 7:15, just go in without me. And you lived with those decisions. This had a strange effect on social life. People were more committed. If you said you'd be somewhere, you were there. Because the alternative was leaving your friend standing on a corner for an hour with no idea what happened to you. Flaking wasn't just rude. It was genuinely cruel. Parents experienced this most acutely. When your kid left the house, they were gone. Not reachable, not trackable. You gave them a time to be home, and you waited. Some parents called neighbors. Some drove around looking. Most just trusted, because what else could you do? It was a different kind of anxiety, not the constant low-level buzz of "why haven't they replied" that we live with now, but a hard, complete silence until the door opened. Some people say they preferred it. The worry had an off switch. When your kid was home, the worry was done. Today, the thread of connection never fully closes. Section 3, getting lost. Let's talk about navigation. Because in 1982, getting lost was a genuine time-consuming event. Road maps were not optional. Every glove compartment had one. Folded, refolded, partially torn along the creases, annotated in pen by whoever owned the car before you. Gas stations sold them for under $1. AAA sent them free to members. But here's what maps couldn't do. They couldn't tell you where you were. They could show you where everything else was. You had to figure out your position yourself, look for a landmark, find a street sign, pull over, unfold the map across the steering wheel, squint, and work backwards from the last thing you recognized. Getting directions from a stranger was a common and completely normal interaction. You'd pull into a parking lot, roll down the window, and ask. Some people were helpful. Some people gave you directions with total confidence that were completely wrong. There was no way to verify. You followed them and hoped. If you were driving somewhere new, the smart move was to call ahead the night before and ask the place you were going to give you directions. You wrote them on a notepad. Turn left at the Sunoco. Go past the water tower. When you see the big red barn, you've gone too far. Road trips required real preparation. AA's triptych service, a custom flip book of mapped route segments, was considered cutting-edge travel technology in 1982. People planned routes over dinner, argued about whether to take the interstate or the scenic highway, and committed to a path before they left the driveway. Contrast that with today, where half of us don't even look at a route before we start driving. We just trust the voice. Section 4, emergencies. This is where the absence of cell phones goes, from inconvenient to genuinely frightening. A car breaks down on a rural road in 1982. You are alone. You have no way to call anyone. What do? You walk. You look for a house with lights on. You hope another driver stops. You wait. Emergency call boxes existed on some highways. Those bright orange phones mounted on poles every few miles. But coverage was inconsistent, and many rural areas had nothing. The advice given to drivers in the early 1980s was practical and unsentimental. Keep a blanket in the trunk, keep flares, keep a couple of granola bars. If you break down at night, stay with the car. It's easier to spot than a person walking. Wave down a truck. Medical emergencies operated on the same logic. If someone collapsed at a public event, you found a payphone, or you ran to find a security guard who had a radio. Every second mattered, and every second was spent moving, not communicating. It's easy to look at this and say, how dangerous. And in some ways it was. But it also produced something that's harder to find now. A culture of stopping. People stopped for strangers on the roadside. They helped because they knew that someday they would need someone to stop for them. Section 5, the quiet. Here's the part that surprises people when they really think about it. In 1982, there were entire parts of your day that were completely unreachable. Your commute, quiet. Your lunch break, yours. A walk after dinner, genuinely disconnected from everything and everyone. Nobody could reach you. And because nobody could reach you, nobody expected to. Your boss could not call you at 9 p.m. on a Sunday. Not because of boundaries. There was no mechanism. The idea of being always available hadn't been invented yet, because the technology to enforce it didn't exist. People had time that was structurally protected from intrusion. Now, this came with real trade-offs. Isolation was possible in a way it isn't now. Someone could be going through something terrible and you wouldn't know for days. There was no quick check-in, no voice note, no thinking of you at midnight. Distance was just distance. You felt it. But there was something in that silence worth noting. When you sat in a waiting room in 1982, you looked around. You people watched. You thought. You noticed the world outside the window. You were there in a way that is genuinely difficult now. Section 6. Waiting was a normal part of life. One thing that's difficult to explain to people today is just how much waiting existed in everyday life. Not waiting for a download. Not waiting for a web page to load. Waiting for people. In 1982, waiting was simply built into life. You called someone's house and they weren't home. That was it. No voicemail, no text message, no scene indicator. You hung up and tried again later. Maybe in an hour, maybe tomorrow. If you were dating someone, you couldn't have a conversation that lasted all day. You might talk for 20 minutes in the evening and then not speak again until the next day. Entire relationships operated on delayed communication. The anticipation was different. A phone call meant something because it required effort. Someone had to be physically near a telephone. They had to stop what they were doing and dedicate time specifically to talking with you. People often arranged their evenings around expected calls. Teenagers would sit near the family phone, waiting for someone special to call. Parents would occasionally pick up another extension by accident and instantly become the most embarrassing people in America. And then there were letters. Not ancient history letters from 100 years ago. Normal, everyday letters. Friends exchanged them. Soldiers sent them home. College students wrote them to their parents. You could pour your thoughts onto paper, place it in an envelope, and then wait days for a response. Days, sometimes weeks. And somehow, life continued. Today we experience waiting as a problem that technology must solve. In 1982, waiting was simply part of being human. Even information moved slowly. Want to know who won a game on the other side of the country? You watch the evening news? Want movie times? You check the newspaper. Want to know if a store was open? You called and asked. There was no instant answer machine sitting in your pocket. The result was that people developed a different relationship with uncertainty. Not knowing something wasn't an emergency. You could go an entire day without the answer to a question and think nothing of it. In many ways, patience wasn't a virtue. It was a survival skill. And perhaps that's why memories from that era often feel slower when people describe them, because they were. Life moved at the speed of people, not the speed of technology. There were gaps between events, spaces between conversations, moments where nothing happened except waiting. And those empty moments weren't automatically filled with notifications, videos, or endless scrolling. Sometimes you just sat there, looking out a window, thinking, watching the world pass by. It sounds boring by modern standards, yet many people who lived through it remember those quiet moments with surprising affection. Not because everything was better, it wasn't, but because every part of life wasn't competing for their attention every second of the day. Waiting wasn't wasted time, it was simply time. And in 1982, there was a lot more of it. The first commercial cell phone, the Motorola Dynatac 8000X, launched in 1983. It cost nearly $4,000. It weighed almost 2 pounds. The battery lasted 30 minutes of talk time, and people waited in line for it, because even then, even before they'd lived a single day with one, people understood what it meant, to always be reachable, to always be able to reach back. 1982 is gone, but some of what it had, we gave away, without really meaning to. If you grew up in this era, if you remember payphones, paper maps, and showing up and just hoping, drop it in the comments. I want to hear your stories. And if you want more videos like this, hit subscribe and come back.